Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where we explore how technology is impacting our lives, our work, and even world. All while learning more about the human stories behind them. And today's guest is Alina Timofeeva, and she is a multi-award-winning principal at Oliver Wyman, who helps major organisations adopt cloud so they can deliver on their business ambitions in a safe and cost-effective way. But she's also been recognised by 7 industry awards in 2021, including Cloud Professional and Digital Leader. And outside of her work, Alina actively gives back to the community through mentoring immigrants and women of diverse cultural and social backgrounds. And she's passionate about helping everyone look at our failure as an opportunity instead of a setback. And her recent TEDx talk, Fail But Never Give Up, has been watched by over 500,000 people and translated into 20 languages globally. So I'm excited to say, buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to London here in the UK, where you're going to be able to join me and Alina in conversation. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yes, thanks a lot, Neil, for inviting me. I'm very excited to be on the show. So I'm Alina Timofeeva. I'm a principal at Oliver Wyman, a strategy consulting firm, and I help major organizations adopt cloud at scale, but at the same time meet the desired business benefits in a safe and cost-effective way. I focus quite a lot on working with the financial services, the big banks like HSBC, JP Morgan, and Credit Suisse. But also I work with the cloud providers, all the major ones, and also I work across 3 lines of defense. I've seen all the different varieties of cloud across the organization.
Fantastic. Incredibly cool. And before we begin, I always like to take my guests back in time. So can I ask that you share your origin story and where your passion for technology and TED Talks came from and the moment that actually put you on this path you're on right now?
Yeah, I mean, the TED Talk, it's nice you ask about it because it just got 500,000 views actually today. So I'm very happy with it. It's like my milestone because it's 6 months live. So it's doing good on views. To be honest, the tech, I wasn't so enthusiastic about technology when I was small. And I was looking for a job in UK and I applied to 500 jobs, which is lots of jobs. Wow. And they were all different. They were not all technology. So it was investment banking, asset management, etc. So I saw myself in investment banking. But I got declined by every single investment bank. I was traveling from Russia to UK and I was really getting very frustrated about getting a job as an immigrant and getting a visa, which is part of my TED Talk in case people are interested. But I guess the thing for me is I started in Accenture because that was one of the job offers which I received. I really wanted to do strategy consulting, management consulting, but they said, because you did maths, we're going to put you as a business systems integration analyst. So I was like, okay, I'll take it because I need the visa and I need the job and I need to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. But my life has evolved very rapidly because I've actually didn't do like the low level configurations. I was actually doing a lot of management consulting with the C-suite, and some of it was strategy on its own, some of it was POC, some of it was implementation. So I really am very happy I joined technology in the end, even though I've never necessarily planned to be part of it.
It's such a great story. And the reason I always ask that is I think very often in any career or industry, we focus on the summit, you know, that big successful moment, the TED Talk with the 500,000 views. But a lot of the learning and the magic happens as that climb to the summit and all the different moments of serendipity that put you on this path. And just for anyone listening as well that wants to check out your TED Talk, what's the name of it again, just so people can find it?
Fail But Never Give Up. So it's more of a personal story, but even for today, because we are talking about cloud, I'll be talking about some of the failures and how, you go through cloud and how you never give up and you get to the business outcomes in a safe and cost-effective way.
Fantastic. And although I suspect everyone listening will know what the cloud is, just to set the scene, can you tell the listeners a little bit more about how the cloud is actually everywhere now, including places that you probably don't associate with technology?
Yeah, so it's true. You can't resist cloud. And many of us have seen the cloud market booming in terms of COVID, because we started using the Zoom calls, the team calls. What I'm quite inspired about is hearing about the news about the Amazon shares, Google shares, how they split the shares because everybody is buying these shares and they're going up in value. And cloud has become so popular that my husband was actually proposing with 3 shares of Google, which now grew up. I did decline at the time, so I did get the ring, but I now think I should have invested in 3 Google shares at the time. And I could bought 3 rings now. Anyway, so that's the first funny thing. But it's more about the value creation. So one of the things the businesses go to cloud for is around, transforming the way how they work, transforming the operating model. So it's not just the technology behind it in terms of hosting in the cloud data centers, but it's more about how do you change your organization, drive the innovation, to drive the sustainability, to drive the quicker time to market. And essentially, we see more and more use cases where cloud is no longer the technology, but it's an enabler for the organization to drive the value. And also, it's a platform which supports the businesses to run the product of the business. So one of the latest case studies is Goldman Sachs that are building a new data management and analytics solution for financial services using AWS. So it's essentially a platform which they use for data monetization of their data, and it's their own product, but it's using cloud. And I find these use cases fascinating because in 2016, when I just started doing cloud, it was more like tack. And now it's more like the ways of working and like a different reality in a way.
And it is a different reality now, and it's evolving continuously. And I'm curious, do you think it's time to, or at least there's an argument to remediate the cloud?
Yeah, so despite a lot of potential and all the good things, like I mentioned right now, many firms are spending material time and money on cloud or moving to cloud, but they don't get the desired benefits of the cost efficiencies, faster time to market, and innovation at scale. So there is research by Flexera, there is research by some of the management consultancy firms, is essentially 1/3 of corporate spending on cloud is wasted, and it's wasted with limited ROI or financial or strategic returns. And essentially, this is something which makes us feel that maybe it's time to think differently about cloud. And it's thinking, how do you adopt cloud at scale to deliver on the business ambitions in a safe and cost-effective way without having this wastage? And the wastage can come from different things. It can be the organizational challenges of the business people not talking to technology people, or it can be the regulatory Section 166 or regulatory findings or regulatory scrutiny, or it may just be having challenges like you don't have enough talent to go to cloud and you are kind of wasting the timeline. So it's taking you longer and longer to actually see the benefits.
And there's an increased expectation from every customer, every client out there at the moment. And I'm curious, how do you see the cloud as an enabler for businesses and helping not only meet those expectations, but exceed them?
Yeah, so there are the different benefits, and sometimes the customers just put them in their cloud strategy on a piece of paper, but don't really realize them practically. But the benefits is innovation at scale, faster product development, the cost efficiency, improved resilience, and positive sustainability impact. I would probably say that for me, it's a lot about the innovation, and it's a lot of making your teams work together more jointly in an agile way, bringing in DevOps, bringing the new ways of working, enabling the business and the technology people to work together on something which really matters for your customers. And what I really advocate for, cloud is a technology, it's a catalyst, but it's a catalyst for change. And the people who are going to see the change are the people like you and me who have the credit cards, who need to do the payments. And we are essentially the customers of cloud.
And you mentioned the word sustainability there, and there's so much talk about sustainability and green tech right now and ESG scores, etc. So how do you see the cloud as a positive environmental impact?
Yeah, so at the moment, many of our clients and organizations, they think about the green IT, and that's essentially looking at technology and how it can drive your net zero agenda. Cloud is just one of the enablers because there are other things which can support your net zero agenda, for example, decommissioning your legacy infrastructure. And there are 2 points of view on the cloud. From one point of view, numerous studies point out the benefits of cloud because you get efficiencies of scale, you get huge data centers that spend much less overhead on cooling, and also the companies can scale up their service on demand, they can save energy in their data centers. And what we see as well from the major cloud providers is that they are investing so much into measuring sustainability and they're trying to use renewable energy. For example, Google, they trained AI to reduce energy that is used for cooling of the data centers by 40%. And I'm sure it's not only Google, it's every cloud provider. They're trying to do something similar. I think one of the things which is different, though, is there is research that shows that much more needs to be done so as to actually see the effect. At this, like from one point of view, it needs to be really bigger in terms of using the cloud. And the critics are saying that the efforts are insufficient. And basically, you need to use much more cloud to actually see the measurable effect.
And outside of concerns around climate and the technology and green tech, etc., there's also the fact that we're in a period of global conflict at the moment. So I'm curious, what regulatory and compliance challenges do you see on the horizon too? Because I think that's rising to the top of people's concerns too, right?
Yeah, so there have been some outages of AWS last year. Now, it's not the first time that outages happen, but it's more like the first time that they were really in the press, really big in publications like Financial Times and Economist. And the regulator has decided to look further into it from the customer resiliency angle. So, for example, in UK, they just announced a consultation on how to boost the security and resilience of the country's cloud platforms. And I tend to talk quite a lot to our customers and even broader in the industry events. And one of them recently found that participants are somewhat confident about the security of the cloud environment. And this is not just the regulatory angle, but it's the broader compliance. Some of the things they pointed out is, they're not quite sure that compliance is evidenced in a good way. So, for example, there is no proper data-driven approach or use of automated controls, or they are being used, but there is still more to be done to showcase the continuous compliance to enable the teams across 3 lines of defense, across the different departments, not just the business side, but also the risk teams, to make sure that they can have the oversight of all the cloud services and they can be confident that the cloud environment is safe and secure. One of the things as well, which comes out quite a lot from the regulatory reviews, is the fact that cloud is treated a little bit in silos. So you can see the technology teams, the security teams really, really looking in detail at it. But at the same time, the senior committees in the board find it very hard to understand the cloud risk across the organization, the aggregated risk. And that's something which comes over and over from the regulator in terms of some of the regulatory findings for quite a lot of organizations.
And another big challenge we've talked a lot about on the podcast is the tech skill shortage all around the world. And the big stat is 0% unemployment in cybersecurity with an additional 3 million jobs incoming. And it's exactly the same story with cloud technology as well. And I'm hearing more and more stories how people are on digital transformation journeys. The tech skill shortage determines which cloud solution that they choose because it depends on what resources they can get their hands on. So I'm curious, again, how do you think businesses can address these talent gaps?
Yeah, so there is the war for digital talent. And in fact, there is a research that says that 54% of CEOs call out that the cloud skill shortage is actually their number one problem. We also hear from clients that there is skills shortage, not just in the first line of implementation, but it's across the second line and the third line as well. So the real thing here is to invest into sustainable cloud talent, skills, and expertise, what we see sometimes people do or organizations do is they spend so much effort bringing in consultants or third parties, but they don't really invest into their own internal capabilities. And what we really would like to see them more doing is identifying, recruiting, cultivating this sustainable, skilled, permanent workforce, supporting the strong employee value proposition and culture, and implementing the new upskilling and talent programs. And one of the things there is, if we take the developers, it's how do you make sure that their life is, easier and more enjoyable? For example, there is no need to drown them in governance meetings, right? And to go from committee to committee to showcase that the risk of cloud is being addressed. It's more like about the automated compliance. And for example, helping engineers actually focus on the more innovative work, at least 20-30% of their time, and minimize the time which they can get frustrated by sitting in governance. There are also other things which you mentioned, Neil, in terms of the technology choices. Mm-hmm. Some of the clients, they want to do a technology choice which is constraintful potentially, but it's actually thinking broader. How can you do the technology choices which are not going to limit your workforce? And if you do have the right talent, that you can train them and you can empower them to deliver the results.
And I appreciate this is a pretty big question, and the question itself is probably bigger than this whole episode of the podcast. It's a debate on its own. But what do you think the secret is to delivering on business ambitions in a safe and more cost-effective way?
Yeah, so one of the challenges that many organizations still see cloud as a technology change. So they focus on the blocks of cloud operations, cloud security, cloud resiliency. So they go to cloud because it's topical, because it's trendy. But to get the desired business benefits, it's important to get the answers to the key questions, such as why are you going to cloud? What is your compelling business driver? Is it the pure cost play, or maybe it's increasing your market share, or it's improving your innovation, or bringing the new customers? How will you get the business value out of the tech transformation rather than it's purely being the tech for tech play? How do you measure the success and value from your cloud investments? And how do you actually give comfort to the senior stakeholders, whether it's your CFO or the board or the senior committees, that the transformation is meeting the desired business benefits? And I just want to highlight once again that the business benefits here, it's not just the, how much cloud you adopt, whether you adopt 70% or 80% or 90% of cloud. It's more like, what does this really mean for your business, for your customers? The people like you and me, Neil, the people that have to pay their credit cards, the people that need to do faster shopping, that want to have this new customer experience, that want to be innovative. So I would probably say that think about cloud, not just as a technology change, but think about it broader. Think about it as a way to empower your innovation and to focus the majority of your budgets on the development of the proposition rather than building the infrastructure and the data centers. And there are different use cases when cloud can support the innovation, like credit decisioning or anti-money laundering processes.
And for any business leader that wants to stay ahead of the curve, what's coming next in cloud transformation, and where should they invest to stay ahead, do you think?
So I would probably say that there are three key things. So one is something we touched upon earlier, but it's investing into your internal cloud capability and having a very clear cloud operating model across the entire organization and not just in the IT. The second one is, if you're a financial services organization, but even broader, think about your cloud risks proactively. And they are not just the data, they're not just the security, but they are across the whole of the business. So the third party, the legal, the compliance, the governance, the risk, the data, the business continuity, the ops resilience, they all have certain angles which contribute to your overarching cloud risk. And if you need to engage with a regulator, and this can be the case, say, for financial services, for medical institutions, then you need to do it early, because the quicker you can showcase the fact to them that you are doing it in a safe and secure way, then, the quicker you are going to deliver on the benefits. And I think that the third thing, which is coming more and more now, it's investing into the automation to support the efficiencies. So again, historically, many people have been using automation when doing cloud, but they've been doing it in pockets. So actually, they may have been doing it, but they found it very hard to convince their leadership or to scale it across the organization, and particularly if there's somebody like really big as a global bank. And what I'm advocating for is using automation and analytics to improve efficiencies. And this could be around the financial control, reusability of key assets, and compliance. And say on compliance, one of the things I mentioned earlier, Neil, was about drowning in governance, right? And in many of the cases, people, instead of having the value creation mentality, they divert back to the audit mentality. And the argument here is, how do you move to the agile innovation mode? How do you use DevOps? How do you spend your efforts on what really matters?
Well, we started the podcast today talking about your origin story. I've learned so much about your journey and the work that you're doing and how you're helping businesses prepare for the future. But as we come full circle, I always like to end the episode on a light-hearted note, shall we say. So I'm going to ask you now, can you share the funniest or most interesting story that has happened in your career when you look back?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably an interesting one. So again, if you look back to my TED Talk, which I'm hoping you're going to watch, it's a lot about the failures, and it's a lot about the challenges which I have experienced as a woman, the first generation immigrant who came to UK without knowing anybody to start the career in technology, when I guess at the time I didn't even know a lot about technology. So one of the funny stories that happened is when I came, I was really struggling with finding all the different accommodations, and I met and I offered that I'm going to stay in his house and pay rent. And he has declined me, and I was very sad about it. And after I actually won my first award, he called me, which I think was like 7 years after our only meeting, and said, "Oh, I actually remembered that we met 7 years ago, and now I really want you to teach me about cloud and about software as a service." So I found it quite funny.
And did you help him?
Well, I did meet him off, and he helped me get my British citizenship by referring me as the person who knew me for the longest period of time, probably, even though we didn't speak to each other for most of the time. But I found that it's quite funny that, you know, when you are struggling and perhaps looking for a job, but then when you get to the success, everybody remembers that they met you before and call you up.
Yeah, it's so true, and a great moment to end on. But before I do let you go, for anyone listening that wants to find out more information about the work that you're doing, contact you or your team, or check out that TED Talk video, what's the best starting point for everything?
Yeah, so I use my LinkedIn quite a lot, and I post a lot about technology and what's happening in cloud and broader in the technology dexterity agenda. The TED Talk is on YouTube, so you can find it, and I'm sure, Neil, you'll share the link to it as well.
I will indeed. And I always do a blog post to accompany the episode, and I'll embed that video in so anyone can check that out too. I cannot thank you enough for coming on here. So much gold around the technology, cloud technology, where we're heading, how businesses can prepare. But more than anything, it was your very human story that brought all this to life. So I'm going to be checking out your TED Talk too. And also, after nearly 2,000 interviews here, this is the first time I've heard someone proposing with three Google shares and getting declined. But there was also a happy ending. So for me, this episode had everything. And thank you so much for sharing it with me today.
Thanks a lot, Neil. Thanks a lot for listening.
There were just so much gold from Alina today. And I love how she brought the world of technology to life with her inspiring story. And as I said at the very beginning of the podcast, we are all guilty of often focusing on who is sitting at the peak of the mountain, who is the most successful, rather than the climb and the journey that they've taken. And for me, the most important parts of Alina's stories is how she's giving back to the community through mentoring immigrants and women of diverse cultural and social backgrounds. So we can all look at failure as an opportunity instead of a setback. Inspiring words indeed. But over to you. Do you have a story to share? Do you have a question, or would you like to come on here and share your story with everyone listening? Whatever it is, please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @Neil C. Hughes. Let's keep this conversation going, and let's put you listening in the spotlight too. But that's it for today. So a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.